and welcome to Cults Today. I'm your host, Aiden Manuel. We've got a great show planned for you, starting with a special treat. Erin and Trotter Kelly, author of the smash hit Blackbird Fly, will be speaking to us live via Skype. She's here today to tell us more about the book and let us know what else is on the horizon for her. Hi, Erin. Welcome to the show.
Well, thank you for having me.
Miss Kelly, can you describe a little bit about what Blackbird Fly is about?
Sure. So Blackbird Fly is about a 12-year-old girl named Apple Yanko, and she is growing up in Louisiana, and she is the only Filipino girl in her school, so she feels a little bit left out. Nobody at school looks like her, and she's got, at the beginning of the book, she has two friends, but that changes throughout the course of the story. So it's just about her experiences growing up as the only Filipino girl in her school in the South.
So you grew up and went to school here in Lake Charles. How would you say living in Louisiana affected the atmosphere in your book?
It influenced it a lot because just like Apple, I was the only Filipino in my school. And when I was growing up, there aren't a lot of Asians in Lake Charles. And there definitely aren't a lot of Filipinos. So from elementary school all the way even through college, I was always the only Filipino in my class. And so when I was growing up, people would always ask me, what are you? What are you? They thought I was Chinese. They thought I was Hispanic. Nobody could figure it out. And I got teased a lot. So that's not to say I didn't enjoy growing up in Lake Charles. I did, but I felt left out a lot of times, and that really influenced the book. Just because, I was just like Apple. I was the only one of my kind.
What was your inspiration for Blackbird Fly?
My own experiences, just kind of like what I talked about, and also I wanted to write a book that celebrated individuality and learning how to be yourself. These are things that I didn't learn till later, and luckily Apple learns them along the way of the book. But I really wanted to send the message that you should be who you are, you should love who you are, no matter what makes you different, embrace what makes you different, because I think that a lot of times people are told to be themselves and be who they are, but that's easier said than done when you want to try to fit in and you want to be like everyone else. So I really wanted to send the message that it's okay to be different and you should really embrace it.
Do you share any similarities to the main character Apple or any other characters in the book? And if so, what are they?
Well, the ones I already spoke of, I share with Apple. One thing we don't have in common is that I don't play the guitar, but what I did was I always loved to write when I was young, and so I kind of replaced writing with music for Apple. So that's one way we're different, but another thing that we share in common is that we both hate carrots.
What would you say is your favorite literary element of the book?
I think my favorite part of the book is the fact that each of the chapters have start off with a Beatles song. So I'll show you a picture. All right. And that's actually something that came in later through the process with my editor. And I found out that when the book came out, that a lot of people really responded well to that. They really liked all the songs in the book. So that's probably my favorite part of the book.
It's better to relate to a story, especially whenever there's something that you can tie into normal life. So I think the music element was a really strong choice in the making of this book.
Great, thank you.
What was the message or overall theme you were trying to convey to readers about Blackbird Fly?
Well, be yourself, of course. Celebrate who you are. If you feel different, embrace what makes you different. And not only that, but also be a good friend. Apple isn't perfect, so there's some parts in the book where her friends are kind of bullies. to another girl in school, and Apple doesn't really say anything because she doesn't want to rock the boat. And I think that's something that a lot of us experience, especially as we're going through school. But eventually she starts to, once she's on the other side, she starts to see how it feels to be the one who's being bullied. And also she makes a really good friend named Evan, and Evan is a kid who doesn't really care that much what other kids think. He's just going to be himself. And he's a really good friend to Apple. And he doesn't care that the other kids are making fun of her. He knows that he can make his own choices of who he wants to be friends with. It doesn't matter what other people say. So that's another message of the book, is to be a good friend and to know who your friends are. So if you're around people who don't make you feel good about yourself, it's really not, a real friend. You want to surround yourself with positive people who make you feel good and who don't try to bring you down.
Yes, definitely.
Sometimes your friends try to bring you down.
This book takes place during middle school. How are the conflicts Apple goes through relatable to what most middle school students are going through right now?
I would say the conflict between, I think people in middle school are often told, like I said, that they need to be who they are. And that's easy to say, but whenever you're in the situation of actually being in middle school, sometimes you're made to feel embarrassed or ashamed or confused about who you are. So it can be really hard to be who you are, but also fit in at the same time. And that's something that I wanted to relay in the book. It's easy to tell kids to be who they are, but it's not always that easy to be who you are when who you are is different from what everyone else wants you to be. And then also just the experiences of witnessing bullying, being on the receiving end or even on the delivering end, and how that can affect different people's lives. I think that's something that a lot of people in middle school can relate to, unfortunately.
Yes, definitely. The dog log and the hotlet are a major element of this book. Would you mind explaining this feature a bit more?
Yes, so the dog log is a list of the 10 ugliest girls in school, as I said, and it's a tradition at her middle school, unfortunately. And in the book, what happens is when you get put on the dog log, it kind of makes you a social pariah, right? So obviously no one wants to be on a list of the 10 ugliest kids in school. But then they also come up with something called the hot lot, which is a list of the 10 prettiest girls in school. And so the book also kind of explores how, you may think that being on the list of the 10 prettiest girls in school would be a positive thing, but that also has its own negative consequences. So basically, don't put people in boxes and don't make lists like that in the first place.
Music from the Beatles plays a huge role in Blackbird Fly. Did having music in your story create a certain mood or move the story along?
I think so, yes. So I chose the Beatles because not only do I love the Beatles, but they're a group that most people are familiar with. And I actually had some people who doubted that middle schoolers would know who the Beatles are, and I really believe that they did, and they do. I've visited lots of schools, and rarely have I come across any kid in middle school who doesn't know who the Beatles are. And they make so much different kinds of music, so people can relate to them on a lot of different levels. And I think that it also builds a connection between Apple and her father. And it also, because the Beatles have so many songs that have so many different moods, we're also able to experience Apple's journey through the music that she listens to in the book. Yes. So usually when she's down, the music she's listening to is down. It's kind of a parallel. Yes. So I think it helped build an atmosphere. I hope.
There's so much great material in the book. How long did it take you to write and edit this book before it was published?
Let's see. It took a really long time. And it's hard to say how long because it went through so many different variations. So I'm going to guess altogether maybe 7 years.
Wow, that's a long time.
From the very first, but I will say the very first draft of the book was a book about a girl who couldn't stop singing. It's very different than the book that came out, but it went through all these revisions. And so give or take, that's about how long it took.
Yeah. Do you ever use people you know in real life as characters or inspiration for characters?
Yes. I do that a lot, and it's usually not necessarily straightforward. So sometimes there's pieces of people that I know. They're in characters, but I usually don't have a character that's a direct, reflection of someone I know, but elements of people that I know find their way, and sometimes into different characters as well.
Yeah.
I think it as a writer that's inevitable because you're inspired by life, and one big part of your life is the people who are in your life. So just like pieces of authors are in all their characters, the people that they know find their way in there too.
Yes, definitely. The cover art is great. There seems to be a lot that goes into marketing a book. What are some of the things you had to do to get the word out and promote Blackbird Fly?
Well, I will say about the cover, here's a fun fact. So here's the cover, for those who don't know, right? The original name of the book was Apple Unplugged. And the editor really loved the title Apple Unplugged, but when she sent it to marketing, they said that it sounded too much like a computer, like an unplugged Apple computer, which is something we had not thought about. So we had to come up with a new title. And as far as marketing, one great thing about my editor, who I work with on the book, is she said the best way to market yourself is to support other people. And I think that's true in life too. I mean, the best way to feel good about yourself, the best way to get ahead in life is to lift up other people, not bring them down. So that's one thing that I love to do. I love to support young writers, and I love to support new authors. And not just because I want to market myself, but because I like to do it. And also, I'm on social media, and I have a website and a blog and all that good stuff. And I go to schools and do school visits and fun stuff like that. All fun stuff.
Yeah. Now that Blackbird Fly is out and is receiving such critical acclaim, do you have anything else in the works?
Yes. So I have my second book that's coming out March 1st. Ta-da! It has Aiden's name in it. And I'm finishing up the edits on my third book, which will come out a year from now. So I'll release the title of the book on my website soon, hopefully. And then I'll have yet another book coming out after that. So I've got a lot to do.
Yeah. I want to thank you so much, Miss Kelly, for taking time out of your busy schedule to sit with my viewers and I today. Do you have any final words you'd like to add about Blackbird Fly and why they should read your book?
You know what? I'll just say that I feel like the book is good for anyone who feels left out, anyone who feels like a misfit, anyone who feels like they're trying to find their place in the world, and anyone who, likes to read.
Yes.
That covers a lot of people.
Thank you so much, Erin, and good luck on the upcoming release of your new book, The Land of the Forgotten Girls. You're welcome back to the show anytime.
Thanks, Aiden.
We're going to go to a commercial break right now, but when we come back, I'll have your latest poll results on the upcoming Student Council presidential elections, along with a special investigative segment on cafeteria food. What is the mystery behind the mystery meat? See you after the break. Stay classy, Cult Nation.